Story 1. My friend told me this story about his wife entitled Mother. My friend and the entitled mother have a daughter who is 7 years old. This happened during the girl's birthday in April. One of the girls at the party, who is 6 years old according to my friend, is our vegetarian girl. Her family has been vegetarian since before she was born, so she has never tasted meat. In case you don't know, this means that her stomach doesn't know how to digest meat. And in case she decides to stop being a vegetarian one day, she would have to introduce it to her diet slowly and, from what I'm told, with the help of a medical professional. The entitled mother promised the girl's mother that she would have a special dish for her daughter. The entitled mother was going to make homemade pizza, so she said that she would make a vegetarian one for the girl. When the girl and her mother got to the party, the entitled mother pointed the mother to a separate plate of pizza, and the lady left for work thinking everything was fine. The kids ate, and according to my friend, the girl ate all of her pizza with no problem. Apparently, she said that it tasted different, but the entitled mother told her that it was because she uses a special recipe for the dough, which is true. Time passed, and the girl complained of stomach pain. Suddenly, she vomited violently and cried, calling her parents. The entitled mother got angry and yelled, "What are you doing? Do you know how much that meat cost me? It was of very high quality." The guests made her admit that she put a lot of meat on the girl's pizza to show that she is just a spoiled brat. The poor girl had eaten a lot, so everyone panicked. They called the emergency number, and the girl left in an ambulance while the entitled mother was arrested. The girl needed a stomach pump and spent several days in the hospital because her stomach barely accepted water. She eventually returned home, but had to limit herself to certain foods until her stomach settled. According to my friend, the girl was born with some health problems, but we don't know if that's what caused the situation to be serious enough to require hospitalization. This has never happened to anyone I know, so I don't know if hospitalization is normal in this situation. I only knew about not being able to eat meat all at once because a friend who is an ex-vegetarian told me about it. The trial has just ended. The entitled mother must pay a large compensation to the daughter's family. She will also spend a long time in jail, as she has shown no remorse for what she has done. Apparently, she kept stating that she did it on purpose and that all children should eat meat. When the judge handed down the sentence, the entitled mother shouted that everyone was against her for trying to give protein to a girl who desperately needs it because her parents are killing her, quote from my friend. My friend has had a pretty bad time, but the girl's mother has talked to him and doesn't blame him since it was shown that he didn't know the entitled mother was going to do that. He was out of town for a month for a family emergency. He came back the morning of his daughter's birthday and has voluntarily submitted all communication he had with the entitled mother at that time. Now that the trial is over, he is asking for a divorce. Taking everything into account, the entitled mother will not be entitled to anything. Their daughter will still be a minor when the entitled mother gets out of jail, but it is highly unlikely that she will be awarded any custody. She, at most, will receive visits at a safe point. Their daughter is in therapy and is very confused. Her father has explained the situation to her, and she knows that it is not the girl's fault that her birthday was ruined. Apparently, the entitled mother has done this to her brother before when he became a vegetarian, but he could recognize the taste of meat and immediately confronted her. I hope the entitled mother learns her lesson this time. I'm glad to say that the poor girl has recovered and is still friends with my friend's daughter. Story 2. At the time of this incident, in the summer of 2014, I was 14 years old and a member of the Army Cadets here in the United Kingdom. I was traveling back from a weekend camp with a group of about 35 cadets and 6 adults. At this particular camp, I had completed a 48-hour fieldcraft exercise, including mock attacks, creating a camp, setting and defending from ambushes, and a 9-ish mile hike in full kit with burgeon and rifle. Out of the previous 72 hours, I had slept for maybe 3 and consumed so much caffeine at one point I could hear my eyeballs moving. While on the coach home, my friend had doodled on my arm, so I had some quite intricate patterning visible on my hand when I rolled my sleeves down. After about 3 hours on the bus, we stopped at some services for food and a toilet break. Important note, I was dressed in my full cadet uniform, which was camouflage combat and smock and shiny black boots complete with rank slide and beret. Cast: Karen, me a very tired cadet just wanting food. Sam, the most senior adult on the coach home, who is a large balding man with a very deep booming voice and a heart of gold. Winter, the most senior cadet on the coach. A short, slim female who was the most aggressive person I've ever met. So there I was, the picture of an exhausted teenager, standing with my friend in front of the pricing board for the McDonald's in the service station, trying to marshal my brain to do the math to work out how much what I wanted was going to cost. Surrounded by people dressed the same as me, in a similar state of exhaustion. I could vaguely hear someone complaining about all these people in the strident, petulant tones of a wild Karen. All of a sudden, the crowd parts like a shoal of fish in front of a roaming shark, leaving only me in the way. I felt a hand grab my shoulder and wrench me around. Entitled mother. I want 2 Big Mac meals with chocolate shakes and a chicken nugget Happy Meal with milk. Me? What? I realized that I was standing in front of the prices and stepped to one side, mumbling an apology and going back to counting my money. Karen grabbed me again and this time shouted at me. Are you silly? I said I want 2 Big Mac meals with chocolate shakes and a chicken nugget Happy Meal with milk. I stared at her blankly and then said, I'm not silly. I don't work here. I don't care. Get me my food now. At this point, I just kind of lost it. Miss, I don't know who you think you're talking to, but don't you think it's a bit weird how the workers wear gray and I'm wearing camouflage? And you know, I've got drawings all over my arm. Or is your head so far up in the clouds that you can't tell the difference? Now, I have had an exhausting weekend, and I am going to get my food. If you touch me again, I will defend myself. All the shouting had attracted the attention of Winter. Winter, hey, what's going on here? Me? I don't know. I pointed to Karen. This woman just grabbed me and yelled at me, so I yelled back. I just want my food. Winter nodded and then gestured me toward the ordering counter. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from my cadets. Winter placed herself between me and Karen. Karen now lost her mind and went into a screaming fit, yelling about disrespect and duty. Winter, not to be outdone, began shouting back about how Karen should respect the cadets. Enter Sam, who shouted loud enough that I could feel it through the floor. Enough, Winter, go order your food. Now, he wheeled to Karen, who was shocked into silence. As for you, I suggest you wait elsewhere until we are all gone. Karen. But I'm the victim. I saw everything. Now leave. Karen looked scared and scurried off, and that was the end of it. Sam and Winter both checked if I was okay and then left me to my meal. You should have seen that woman running out of the store. It was glorious. Story 3. Several years ago, I worked in the purchasing department of a large semiconductor company in the United States. Mostly, I handled all the non-production purchases and contracts like office equipment, building management, travel contracts, that sort of stuff. However, my biggest role was negotiating and approving temporary staffing contracts for RS factories. One day, a director, we'll call him Bill, sent me a request for $150,000 for temporary workers at a small facility in the middle of nowhere in Florida. The news was that a couple of local businesses had closed, and he had this great idea to save the company money by moving some production down there and snatching up those now desperate workers on the cheap. It seemed like a bit of a silly idea at the time, but it was clearly his pet project, and $150,000 was within his right to spend without additional approval. So I rubber-stamped it, and off he went. I hadn't had much interaction with Bill, but he was a pompous jerk, so I was glad to get rid of him. Now it's important to this story to understand that our company's finances were super tightly controlled. Not a bad thing, but if you wanted to spend $1 over your role's limit, you better have your supervisor's signature. In triplicate. Directors like Bill could spend up to $250,000, vice presidents $500,000, and anything over $500,000 had to go all the way up to our chief executive officer for approval. About 3 months later, the trouble started when Bill suddenly turned back up asking for more money. It turned out, rural Florida doesn't have a lot of people with the skills to work in an industrial clean room, and the people who do don't come cheap. The money that was supposed to last a year was already gone, but Bill was certain that he just needed a little more time and asked me to approve another $250,000 without telling our vice president, his boss. I straight up refused since it's my literal job to stop this. But Bill, being God's gift to this company, threw an absolute fit. It got ugly, and long story short, my boss directly ordered me to approve Bill's money without escalating it. I got this all in writing since it was sketchy as heck and absolutely something I could get fired for. Finally, Bill was gone, and I didn't have to see his smug, short, balding head anymore. or so I thought. Having disrespected the great and powerful Bill, I was now the target of his displeasure. For the next 4 months, I got at least 3 emails or phone calls a day from him or his secretary about something they didn't like about the building, the landscaping, the guy who brought the bottled water, the snack selection in the machine, the equipment in the sea-level gym, and on and on. I was getting openly berated for things that had nothing to do with me, but I was stuck having to deal with them because my boss kept caving to Bill's whims, and none of my paperwork was getting past his office either. I managed the purchasing for 12 facilities in the US and Europe, but if it needed his signature, I had to personally bring it to him and stand there while he reviewed it, or he would refuse to sign. It was somewhere between humiliating and infuriating, and I increasingly wished he'd fall down a staircase. After months of this, finally, my chance for malicious compliance arrived. Shockingly, Bill hadn't managed to turn his pet project around. And what do you know? He just needed $250,000 to get him through the year. I signed off, added the money to the purchase order, which now totaled a cool $650,000, and shot off an email to both him and my boss to remind them that this wouldn't be shown to the vice president. Then I printed everything out, including the direct order not to show it to the vice president, and marched over to the chief executive officer's office for him to sign. After all, it was now over the $500,000 required limit, and Bill never asked for him not to see it. All hell broke loose when they realized Bill's little project was $500,000 over budget. He didn't lose his job, but he refused to speak to me after that, which was exactly what I wanted. The Florida project was scrapped and retasked to making basic electrical components. My boss was initially upset, but once he realized my insistence on getting Bill's order in writing had probably saved both our butts, the whole thing went away. I was there for another year, and thankfully Bill never made an appearance at my office ever again. Story 4. I've been on a beach house vacation with my grandparents, aunt and uncle, and cousins. My aunt and uncle have 3 kids, Elise 10, Liam 8, and Trevor 6, and have a very conservative way of raising them, with only 1 hour of screen time a week for each of them. They do not have personal electronics, which I think is acceptable, but I was raised quite differently, being given an iPad at age 8 and a phone at age 11. Now, in my mid-teens, I don't use my phone often, but often enough for a conservative adult's discomfort. I let Elise and her siblings play Minecraft for an hour on my iPad, and when my uncle found out, he was livid. He called me a bad influence and a bad cousin, and he told the kids that if they even so much as looked at a screen, he would pack them up and send them home from North Carolina to New Hampshire. For context, never mind the fact that it's summer vacation, he went full psycho. I couldn't show the kids a photo I took of the sunrise that morning, since it was screen time, and they couldn't even pass by me when I had my phone out, because the entitled dad would intercept it. While on their little screen ban, we went to dinner at a restaurant with TVs, football games, etc., playing in the background. The entitled parents told the kids that if they saw their eyes so much as past the TV, they would be going home. Entitled dad signaled over the waiter and asked if they could turn off the TV since his kids misbehaved and didn't deserve to have it on in their presence. The waiter gave him a weird look and told him that he'd checked code for no and returned to the kitchen. Entitled dad asked again, and the waiter said that since there were other people in the restaurant, they could not halt the entertainment system just for them. Entitled dad sat angrily and tried to get the rest of the family to leave, but we had already received our food, so they refused. Entitled dad was fuming, and entitled mom was making sure the kids didn't look at screen. Still, these people are ridiculous. I can't believe I'm related to them. All I wanted to do was play Minecraft with my little cousins.